Yes, I can see that you are online. Dr. Paa Kwasi Sefa-Frimpong, are you with us?
Hello, I'm here.
Hello, hi, hello. Thank you so much for joining us. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Paa Kwasi Sefa-Frimpong. I hope I've pronounced that right.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's fine. You did. Yeah, you did.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Olawale gave me some help, I'm not going to lie.
Okay, that's fine.
Dr. Sefa-Frimpong is a public health focused medical practitioner with a bachelor's in psychology and a bachelor of medicine and a bachelor of surgery.
Yeah.
That's you have three degrees and a master's in public healthcare as well. Amazing. His credentials have enabled him to seek or participate in new initiatives that enhances healthcare in Africa. He's provided project support on all aspects of research, data collection, monitoring and evaluation, and quality control. He's got prior experience with program implementation and management, public policy advocacy training and strengthening health systems. As a member of the Health Impact Fund project team, I believe your main goal and intents are to provide a complementary mechanism for the development of pharmaceutical breakthroughs, particularly those aimed at impoverished patients in Africa who cannot afford expensive medicines and Medicare. That's incredible. It's an absolute honor to have you here with us today, and over to you. And by all means, if I've missed anything, any gaps in your background, feel free to elaborate.
No, it's actually an honor to be here as well. You haven't missed anything. I think that is enough. And previously, I mean, going through today's program, I realized that there's been a lot of digitalization, how to put data together. But so it's actually perfect that I'm the last on the list, because I'm going to talk about medication. I'm going to talk about how, you know, irrespective of the conversations that we're having about how we're going to like keep data, how we're going to count people, how we're going to be able to have those sort of resources, what is going to help us to also live longer, you know, increase our age expectancies, etc., especially in very impoverished parts of Africa, in the sub-Saharan Africa. And so let me try and share my screen. Okay, so the topic that I'm going to take you through today is the promotion of African pharmaceutical manufacturing to create affordable medicines through the use of the HIF model. And the HIF model is literally the Health Impact Fund model. And so with the Health Impact Fund, we will talk about the problems, right? And so the main idea is the innovation assets, right? And so when we talk about medication in the summary and simple, we look at, for example, in sub-Saharan Africa, from the west of Africa to east and south in, how we are having issues with medication, especially, and also with an example of COVID. During COVID, we saw that we had a lot of issues with the vaccines, where Africa was lagging behind when it came to vaccines, and we had to wait on the first world countries to navigate and send us vaccines before we're able to even start vaccinating our own population. And so the innovation is how companies that manufacture can focus on products based on how we're able to build our own manufacturing within Africa, and how that can help us to be able to also navigate the pricing of medication. And so we'll look at the long-term solution, right? Which is how the Health Impact Fund comes in. And so it's more to do with how do we get manufacturers, right? Especially in Africa, to manufacture in Africa. And so, like I was giving an example, I'll take malaria, for example, in the west of Africa. Most of the medication that comes in to the west of Africa is from India, is from China, and other parts of Asia. And it's very expensive. Most of the time, also the efficacy of those medication does not really work, you know, because it's commercial based. And so looking at it, we buy a very expensive medication. We have to import it from India or China, and then it comes to Africa. And yet, even though with all that, we still have issues with efficacy. And so the main idea is, how do we come together and build sort of manufacturing in Africa, find places, find spots, determine how we'll be able to navigate and be able to build already existing infrastructure, which is in manufacturing in the pharmaceutical realm, to be able to produce such medication, which is going to be effective for our people. And so the long-term solution is viable, but also we are also asking the why. Why are we looking at building this sort of infrastructure in Africa, and why the pharmaceuticals should align with us for us to be able to move this goal forward? And so you look at how for pharmaceuticals, it will align with their corporate incentives. They will use existing effective mechanisms to support already in innovation. It will also encourage firms to think holistically from development to delivery, and also provide support for new treatments for important diseases and increasing global health security. And so once we're able to address the whys of why we're doing this, then we'll be able to be in positions to move forward. It's very important that we're looking at digitalization, for example, but it's also important that we look at medication, because without effective medication that is working, that is helping people to live lives and be able to expand our life expectancy, then we are not going to be able to have the manpower to be able to move forward. And so the immediate goal or the immediate idea is to come up with, how do we solve this issue? And so we've come up with a pilot program, which is going to be a 5-year pilot program of $100 million, in which 3 or 4 projects will be selected. And so the idea is each project will extend the use of novel or existing underused drug to low-income countries, for example. And so the proponent will be getting maybe 5 countries in parts of Africa, maybe one in the east, one in the south, one in the west, one in the north, for example, and having pharmaceutical companies come on this pilot scheme, where the willingness is for the firms to compete on the basis assessed on the health benefit. And so the ability to use assessed health benefit to determine the financial rewards. And so the pilot also bring health benefits to patients. And that is the main idea of the pilot. So we'll take, for example, an example of medication. So let me give you a typical example. We have oxfenazole, which treats river blindness. And if you look at Africa, from Senegal across to Ethiopia, from Malawi to Angola, about 30 countries in Africa are affected by river blindness. And this is an issue, but yet we do not even have medication to effectively treat river blindness, for example. And so what sort of products might the pilot entail? And so an example is creating or building or manufacturing oxfenazole in certain countries within Africa for that medication to be able to, for example, to treat a river blindness. We're also looking at, so you can ask the question, where are we at the moment? And at the moment, we've had extensive discussions with pharmaceutical companies. We've also had general discussions with other health impact organizations in Africa. And then we've also been having conversations with other stakeholders on how we can take this fund and make this pilot as an example that this can work if we can be able to build our own long-term sustainable manufacturing plants in Africa, or expand on the existing plants that are already in Africa. Then we'll be able to move forward when it comes to, for example, time for us to battle and look for vaccines, like we had issues with COVID, for example. And so we've been having interactions, and the interactions have been really going well. And so the discussions are structured on partnership with private sector firms, also evaluation at the core, also looking at innovative finance, and establishing a model in which all lives are valued equally, but focuses on the poorest first, because they are the ones who are not able to afford the medication. And then we create a model for a global cooperation on other issues like climate change, which is also very important. And so what the fund really is going to be about is highlighting us away from why we are so dependent on imports of medicine. And also, what is access? Imported medicines are often slow to arrive and very expensive, whereby we have local manufacturing that can deliver better access to the products that people need. Why don't we look at that, building or expanding on the local manufacturing already, which is in place? And so if you look at the price variation across 7 to low middle income countries for generic pharmaceutical medication, we tend to see that the prices are often 5 to 30 times higher than the lowest international price, in the way that this says that medication that is, for example, being produced in India is probably costing India, the manufacturing plant in India, maybe $10 to produce, right? But when it comes to Africa, the purchasing price is maybe $150 to buy. And so looking at the gap between production and purchasing, it's a very big gap, because now it's been produced in India or in China, for example, and it's coming into Africa. There's exports, there's taxes that are also being put on the medication. And so we can cut all this by looking at how, if the manufacturing is being done at home, and then once the manufacturing is being done at home, then we know that we don't have to be thinking about tax. We don't have to be thinking about transportation to transport it from the Far East, for example, and bringing it into Africa. And that will also already help our people to be able to be able to afford those sort of medication. And so looking at the pilot, or the idea of the pilot is to try and advance both manufacturing access with a reward divided between competitors. And so, like I said earlier, if we have probably 5 manufacturing plants who are ready and willing to get into this pilot for us to have that initiative, then they would manufacture the medicine in Africa, which is being produced on the African continent. And they will sell it wholesale at the cost of production as well, without no tax, without no transportation, without all the other things that it needs to be brought from overseas, for example. And so if the reward of the fund is 50 million and 5 manufacturers enter, then we are going to look at how the 5 manufacturers who are going to enter the competition, or who are going to enter the pilot, how they're going to navigate and how they're going to look at building the sort of medication that are in dire need in Africa that we can produce. And so the benefits are the manufacturers will increase capacity and build the know-how. It also creates high quality employment, because not in the sense that we are creating or manufacturing our own medication on the planet, or on the continent. We're also going to create employment. The manufacturers will also focus on products that are currently overpriced and undersupplied. So we'll look at medication that are not being produced in Africa, and they will make sure that they manufacture that. What are the benefits? The patients will also benefit from low price access to quality medication. The payments or purchasing will also be very competitive. And the manufacturers also have incentives to discourage large wholesale markups because it's going to be competitive. And so the strategy is we're developing this proposal now to seek and also to bring in partners who can help to advance this cause forward. And we're seeking also supportive funding for the Health Impact Fund African pilot from governments, non-governmental, OECD, etc., to be able to move forward with this. So the discussion is going to be centered around how we have structured as partnership with private sector firms, how we evaluate how the pilot will work or revolve, and also establish a model in which all lives are valued equally, irrespective of the focus on what people can afford and what people cannot afford. But then medication should be if you can afford or you cannot afford. And so the incentive is more to look at how are we going to move forward and how are we going to be able to be in positions whereby we will provide and make sure that medication is accessible to everybody. And so if we look at that, we'll look at how we're going to have innovations and how we're going to make sure that valuing the survival and the health of all human beings are equal. And so that is very important. I will end by saying that the main idea and the main innovation is developing drugs that are very substantial in the market and which will be able to help, and also making pharmaceutical innovators and their profits from markups. But then when we look at medication in Africa, we're looking at positions whereby we're feeling like if we're in a position that we can provide or produce or manufacture our own medication that will be affordable, then we'll be able to reach half of what our initiative is. Thank you.
My apologies. It's usually me telling other people that they're on mute. I apologize for that. I was just saying thank you so much. That's incredible and a really, really good point in terms of the actual Medicare access that you're able to facilitate for sure.